Welcome to the Real Estate Syndication Show. Whether you are a seasoned investor or building a new real estate business, this is the show for you. Whitney Sewell talks to top experts in the business. Our goal is to help you master real estate syndication. And now your host, Whitney Sewell.
If you are not able to raise millions of dollars quickly and do not understand some key things your investors are looking for, you are not going to close on your next acquisition. If you're looking for some help to explode your syndication business and wanting to learn from someone that has been in your shoes, I'm ready to help you. I am taking on a few clients over the next 3 months to ensure their success by learning the things that have helped us to be able to raise over $10 million in 10 hours numerous times. If you are someone that is motivated and ready to take action, apply on our website to see if you qualify. This is your daily real estate syndication show. I'm your host, Whitney Sewell. Today, our guest is AJ Shepard. Thanks for being on the show, AJ.
Thanks for having me, Whitney. Appreciate it.
Yeah, AJ and his brother Chris own Uptown Properties out of Portland, Oregon. AJ is the current RVP for the National Association of Residential Property Managers and volunteers to help property managers learn, grow, and build relationships across the nation. AJ definitely has some skill sets that we all need on our team. As commercial real estate owners, operators, or even as a passive investor, you need to know that your operator has someone like AJ on their team. One of their claims to fame is turning a bad property community, and that's what I want us to get into today, and some examples of how they have done that successfully, because that's where the value is as well, right? Is operating that property well and building that good community. So AJ, welcome to the show. Give us a little more about your background in commercial real estate and maybe getting into property management and why that's your focus. And let's talk about, maybe some examples of how you all brought, those bad properties and made them into good communities.
Sure. Appreciate you having me on the show, Whitney. I've been listening a long time and very excited to be here. So appreciate that. My brother and I started buying properties right at the downturn back in 2007, 2008. We got up to enough properties that we're like, hey, why don't we start managing for other people to bring in some more income? So sometimes we call ourselves the accidental property manager. And in around 2013, 2014, we found the association, NARPM, National Association of Residential Property Managers. And it's been a great place to learn how to really hone our skills with property management and really just become kind of like the best in our craft. We like to think that we're rising and growing a lot, growing at least 50 to 60% each year. Steady growth. When we started doing syndications ourselves just in the last couple of years, and starting to buy larger and larger properties. So that's kind of our background as far as like where we've gone. We've got a property management company that we opened up in 2011, construction company that we opened up in 2011, brokerage, and then now syndication. And yeah, really what we found through what we know is like really making sure that the property is managed well and turned over well is really the keys to success, and making sure that you keep your vacancy low and then your profits high.
Nice. Well, you have tons of experience and there's so many things we could talk about on the show. But as far as the property management piece alone, I want us to dive into that bad property, and maybe you have an example or a couple examples, of where it was difficult or where it's not the common scenario, of that value add we talk about often, but some scenario where you all been able to turn a bad property or what was considered a bad property into a good community. And let's walk through some of the things you did that the listener could do as well.
Yeah, absolutely. About a year ago, we purchased a 9-unit complex, from a self landlord, someone that managed it themselves and kind of had, deferred maintenance on the outside, a lot of tenants on just like different lease agreements, some cars or some vehicles and some landscaping. I mean, I'm sure you've kind of seen those type of properties. And we really, what we did was come in and I wouldn't say lay the hammer down, but it's really being diligent about making sure that you keep on and say what you're going to do and do what you're going to say. So in this property, what we did is generally the first thing that we like to do is make sure that everyone is on the same lease agreement. Typically, when you get this property, everyone's got a different sort of agreement. So what we do is give them a notice to put everyone on the same agreement. And it's an agreement that we know really well. That way,
you have to honor that old agreement, though, right?
We do. And most of the time when you get these properties, the tenants are on month to month. So usually it's just a change in terms. There's no real consideration that needs to be given for that. Just because their term is literally like 30 days. But you do have to give them that 30 days notice to change the terms. So that's really good. Sure. And maybe not starting right away with rent increases. We usually like to change the utilities over to a RUB system. That's our rental utility billing system. And then once we've got those new terms in place, it's really about making sure that those new terms are followed. In ours, we have specific considerations that don't allow for vehicles to be parked in landscaping. They have to be parked on the street. There's no tarps, like all these like kind of little things that like really the curb appeal of the property to make it looking a lot better.
Like it's in the lease because people have done it, right?
Yeah. I mean, like there's a lot of, knowing your lease inside and out is really important. And like as a syndicator, it's kind of important. Your property manager is going to have one that they use inside and out at every property. It just makes sense for us to do that. So getting a copy of that lease and understanding what's in it, like what sort of rules the property manager has to apply by and what sort of rules the tenant needs to apply by. And having a good idea of that could be super helpful.
All right. So, making sure they follow those things is easier said than done, right? And I can definitely think of some examples personally where it's so important to know your lease because there are just times where there's bad actors, right, that you need to be evicted, right? There are, it's damaging to the entire community. But there's ways that obviously you're trying to protect the other tenants as well and create that good community like you're talking about. What about any other ways as far as, you take over a property like that, you're going to ensure everyone's on the same lease. You're going to put RUBs in place. You're going to, new terms are in place, and you're going to make sure they're followed. Speak to that a little bit, obviously, and maybe speak to the operator who's working with a property management company like yourself and trying to ensure that these things are followed and what happens when they're not followed and just following up to ensure we do develop a good community like you're talking about.
Yeah, again, it's about consistency, making sure that the correct notices go out at the right time. And every jurisdiction's a little bit different. We're in Portland, Oregon, and I'm sure everyone's heard on the news of rent control and all the stuff going in, and the landlord tenant laws are pretty strict. So making sure that we follow those to a T is really, really helpful. I will say that like NARPM is a community of property managers, which allows us to ask questions of our fellow colleagues, which is a lot, I would say, not necessarily, but it is cheaper than just like going to a lawyer every time. So it's really kind of like crowdsourcing that information. And anyone in the NARPM community will say that they've asked for that information, and it makes it easily accessible, which is super nice.
Is that a platform or association that's good for landlords as well, or owners, or operators, or is that mostly just for property management companies?
It's comprised of professional property management companies. So One of the prerequisites to be in is you have to have a professional license. Okay.
All right. So I guess go right ahead. Just about that relationship between the operator, property management company, when we are turning that property, from the bad community into a good community, it's so important. How do we manage that relationship to ensure we're doing it as efficiently as possible?
Yeah, and we work with larger clients as well. And the best thing to do is have regular meetings with them until the property is really stabilized. Oh yes, we have meetings once a month with our client. Make sure that we have a schedule so we know what notices are going to go out, and then how long it's going to take for those notices to come into place, and then what the next notice is going to go out. And we just kind of have this schedule down. That schedule kind of goes like, a notice of the change of agreement. And then we go in, and during that time, say we stripe the parking lot, make sure to put numbers on it. We come up with a plan for parking, and then we start charging for parking. Or we change that agreement, and then, maybe a month or two later, we then implement RUBS, and then we know that that takes 90 days to set effect. And then we kind of stagger these sort of like increases or, stuff that the tenant is receiving. And hopefully we always try to couple it with a little bit of improvement as well. Maybe, fixing up the landscaping. Like I said, maybe removing those vehicles from the site, like making that curb appeal better. So what you're doing is you're actually improving the community, and the tenants see that you're improving it and then understand why the rental increase is warranted.
Nice. I wanted to go back to the lease a little bit. That document's very important, right? Speak to maybe common things that are not in a lot of lease agreements. I know you talked a little bit about it, but anything that's out of the norm that it's like has been just a game changer or lifesaver for your property management company.
The lease that we use is pretty standard, and we've been using it a long, long time. I know that what we find in other people's leases is they try to add stuff in there that isn't allowable by law. So we use a standard form that I wouldn't say the state comes up with, but some associations come up with, and it's tried and true. As far as like what's in the lease specifically, items that deal with parking, items that deal with tenant upkeep, what they're responsible for, whether there's barbecues allowed on the place or not, whether, they can have their bikes outside, like strapped to the railing or not. Like these sort of things that like you go by and you're like, oh man, that place kind of looks interesting. And like just having those like small little nuances not there and increasing that curb appeal can do a lot for your overall return. I could probably go on and list a lot more things that are in the lease, especially if I had it right in front of me. But I think the main thing is really like reading that all the way through in a fine tooth comb.
Any other just keys to success in property management that you could share before we move to a few final questions?
Yeah. So the other portion, like as you're bringing this new property on, like getting it set up correctly is great. But then as you're going through the cycle, really managing it and making sure that you're reducing your vacancy and you're maximizing your profit. Like vacancy is the silent killer for a lot of properties. So what we do, there's a new program called Rent Check Out. We send that to our tenants. Sometimes we get a property and we haven't even been in the unit. When we're bringing on new clients, sometimes the tenants are, it's a fourplex and one unit is vacant, but the other three are occupied. So we've never seen these units. The owner typically doesn't provide us any sort of information. So getting the tenant to actually do that rent check and like having them check out the carpet, the flooring, the cabinets, like, is this stuff that's going to need to be replaced? Is there any major items that you can start getting prepared for? I mean, maybe the tenant had kids and there's just like crayons all over the wall. Like that way, that you can schedule your painter. So if you get that, we typically send this, we call it a scope of work inspection. We do it about a month before a turn. And then the tenant then provides us that information, hopefully within 2 weeks. And then we have about 2 weeks to like prepare for this turnover. So the day that they move out, we're able to get in there and get that work done within a week and have it ready for showing afterwards. So another couple tips that we do too. Another couple of tips that we do is when you're writing your leases, in Portland, there's a cycle. Most people don't want to move over the holidays, kind of like November, December. So that's really bad time. It starts getting cold in like October, November. Nobody really wants to move then. And then January and February is just like everyone's working on losing that weight and not drinking. So we find that there's like a season for moving. And if you want to get the best rent prices, you put your house up for rent when there's a lot of people looking at it. We found that the more people that see your rental, the better off that you're going to do to get that higher price. So we typically write our leases to end anywhere from like April to like August, I want to say. And if we're in like say September, like we'll just write an eight month lease. It can be shorter than a year, it can be longer than a year, but we find that like we're going to get a 10 to 15% higher rent if we're within that window. And I don't know, like I'm sure that there's windows for every state. You just got to figure out what that window is. Another tip that we've done is sometimes people like really just want to get out or move. And writing the leases to end on a Sunday, so that when, as a property manager, I employ people to work Monday through Friday. Most of the time, I might have one person on the weekend. But if that lease ends on the 30th or the 31st, and that 31st is a Thursday, like my inspector isn't going to get out there till Friday. And then I'm wasting those like 2 days in between on the weekend of not getting anything done. Like trying to really start that turnover process at the beginning of the week so you get the maximum amount of people into the property and maximum amount of work done in the shortest amount of time.
That's a great tip right there. Like don't make the lease end. Look at that year ahead or see what day of the week that is. So it ends on, you're saying like make it end on Monday or Tuesday.
We're picking dates for like 8 months of the year. Like I literally have to pick eight days of like when we want the leases to end. And then I give that to my person who's writing leases, and when they set up a new lease, they just pick one of those days that works. And yeah, it's not something that's really tough.
So you mentioned like vacancy being the silent killer, and tell us some ways that you all have been creative to decrease vacancy or maybe, increase your traffic and things like that.
Yeah. Getting the property up for lease, like marketed. When we see that rent check, like as soon as we get that back, like that property is up and we are getting people not into the property, but like taking people in from our marketing. Like we post it to, I want to say 30 or 40 different sites. Most of our stuff comes in through Zillow, which they've now started charging for, which is new. We also still use Craigslist. And then our back-end property management software syndicates to like 30 or 40 different sites. But tracking that and making sure that we know exactly how many leads are coming in. And I think that this may be a little bit more, it may be different because we do a little bit of smaller multifamily, and each unit can be a little bit unique. So really looking at those numbers, like if we put it up for marketing 2 weeks before and I see that like only 2 or 3 leads have like really want to see the property, that's not enough to get a lease signed in a couple of weeks. Like we always shoot for 2 weeks to have a lease signed. We may be a little bit under market, but I can tell you that having 2 to 4 weeks less of vacancy at a $50 less a month is only $600. Like it's well worth it to get someone in and the place leased out rather than have it sit vacant for a month. So, yeah.
No, that's great advice. That's great advice. Yeah. You think through your vacancy and will be costing you, trying to wait and get that rent increase by a few dollars a month. And as opposed to, the vacancy for over a long period of time.
And to elaborate too, like as a syndicator, if you're working with a property manager, they should be able to kind of give you an idea of how many people are looking at that marketing. Like when pricing is very, subjective to each market. But like if there's not a lot of people looking at that marketing, I mean, you can look at a few different things. Like are the photos good? Having great photos is, we find, one of the highest things that drives traffic to your listing. Like having those great photos. We do 3D tours too. Ricoh Camera has a 3D camera it's a lot cheaper than Matterport. So that is very helpful. We do those with our listings. And so that's the number one thing to get like those listings really, really marketed well. But as a syndicator, you should be able to ask like, hey, how many people are coming to see it per week? How many people are like saying I want to see it per week? Like these sort of numbers are available on the back end of marketing, and making sure that, if that property manager can't give you that information, there might be something, you want to look at or suggest that they can improve.
Are there any other pieces of technology that have helped you to streamline the lease up process, or even just, or any platforms as well, like Facebook Marketplace or Craigslist or apartments.com, any of those? It's like, we've got to have it on this platform, and this is how we handle that to ensure we're, getting in front of as many tenants as possible.
I'm happy to share what we use. We use AppFolio for a back-end software. I think most of the a lot of property managers do. Some people use Yardi, Buildium. We use Lead Simple for sales process, which is like bringing on new clients. And they recently just started an automation. My company is actually in our second week of implementation of that. So I will have to come back on and let you know how it goes. One of the things that we do that really helps out, and Whitney, I'm not sure if you use, but we use offsite professionals. I've got like 8 or 9 girls in the Philippines that work for us that do a lot of work at a significantly lower price, which is super helpful. We also do self-showings. And I don't know if a lot of syndicators do this or allow for it, but what we've found is putting a lockbox on the site. Typically, it's like a code box, kind of like a real estate box, where the tenant has to send a photo in of their driver's license, make sure they're a real person, but then they can access it and see it whenever they want. We actually had this implemented well before COVID, which was pretty cool. Like we had, 5 or 6 showings like on Christmas Day, which, is like, you're not going to employ a leasing agent to be out there on Christmas Day, but if someone really wants to go look at it, they can.
Is there a technology behind that helps you to manage self showings?
Sure. We use Tenant Turner. And then there's a couple others. There's like Show Mojo or Rently. But we use Tenant Turner. They do have a little bit of AI with the response. So if someone texts in, like they have an AI that responds and then gets that person like into the place as quickly as possible.
Elaborate on, you mentioned 8 VAs in the Philippines that are working, doing a lot of this. And I mean, I've used a lot of VAs for a lot of different things and still have, using them now. Very useful and great workers typically do great work. Tell me a little bit about what they are doing for you, what they can do in their process a little bit.
Absolutely. So first of all, the first thing we do is we use a voice over IP. So Rowena answers all of our phone calls, answers all of our tenants. If they call in, they're like, I need to submit a work order. She's like, go to this website. Or she maybe tries to help them out a little bit more, points them in the right direction. So she handles that. I have a next customer service specialist, Angel, and she does a lot of the lease renewals, and she contacts tenants about renters insurance, making sure that that's all up and going. And then I have another girl that really does kind of like the lease application process. She handles all the new tenants coming in, making sure that they're able to get into a new place. I have a couple of leasing agents that are like brokers in Portland. But each of them now have an assistant where they can do and manage a lot more properties. So they're the ones putting up the marketing, coordinating with the photographer to make sure that they get in, making sure that the photos get listed. Craigslist ads are all up and going. Everything's looking good for all those properties and units. And then I have another one that does like invoices for construction. Another one that does accounting stuff, enters all of our utility bills, splits it up into rubs, then applies it to each of the accounts. And then another one that does like bookkeeping for some of our several companies. So they range in capabilities. And it really depends on, probably a little bit on pay, but like really interviewing and making sure that you get that A player. But it's been great having them. We do call them offsite professionals, and they come to all of our meetings every Wednesday.
I love that term.
Every Wednesday. Yeah. So every Wednesday we have them on video conference. I've been doing video conference well before COVID. We use Ring Central, and I've actually had them on the TV screen at events. So we'd have a live event in our office, and I'd put them up on the TV screen and have them interact with either my clients or people coming into the office, just to show that these are actual people. They're human beings, and they do great work just like anyone else. So we've utilized that a lot, and really, really enjoy having them on our team.
Yes, us as well. I love that term, offsite professionals instead of VA or virtual assistant. I appreciate that. And I appreciate you laying out those tasks there. It's great for the listener to be able to hear, these people are extremely capable. Honestly, the lady that's full-time for us in the Philippines, we have different people that work for us there, but her grammar and English is much better than mine. She was a teacher there and is just very skilled, and is very dedicated. And so, she's been great, a great asset to our team. And so, AJ, what do you predict, say, over the next 6 to 12 months to happen, say, in the real estate market?
I'm really interested to see what happens with the eviction moratorium. Currently in Portland, I think this month, some of the tenants, if they haven't said that they've got problems with COVID, are going to have to start paying that back rent. Luckily, we haven't seen as much as maybe the rest of the U.S. has seen, or either my company has not seen as much. I think we're at 3% of people that haven't paid. So we feel very fortunate in that aspect. But I believe that nationally, it's a lot higher than that. I have heard rumblings of landlords saying that they're going to want out, and nobody wants to sell right now with their property being underperforming or a bad asset. So I think that we're going to see a lot of properties like this pent up selling demand, or pent up people that want to sell, come into the market. And I want to say it's going to be probably towards late summer, maybe even into Christmas would be my guess.
Okay. What about a couple of daily habits that you are disciplined about that have helped you achieve success?
I wouldn't say they're daily habits. They're weekly habits. I typically write a to-do list Monday morning on I come in, just kind of sit down before I answer email, and I'm all right, what are the high important tasks that I need to get, I need to get done, or I need to make sure that get done this week. And then my brother and I also set yearly goals, really stretch goals, and really breaking those down to quarterly goals. And then we meet once a week and then make sure that we're on track for those goals. And that's been super helpful. And it's really just outlining what are the high important tasks that need to get done, and then following up with those.
What about the number one thing that's contributed to your success?
I would say a while ago, my brother and I have always been the do-it-yourselfers. Been in there. I remember I was demoing flooring in one property, or putting in plumbing, or doing all this stuff. I will say the advent of having and hiring employees and really partnering with people to help us get more stuff done has been a huge success. And over the last 5 years, we've really scaled with that. I think we went from 2 employees to about 20.
Wow. Awesome. Tell us and how you like to give back.
I really do enjoy the NARPM position as RVP. That is a volunteer position. I help the chapters currently this year over in California and Hawaii. I'm talking with them kind of once a month, the leaders of the chapter, on how they can run a better chapter meeting, how they can really give back to their community a little bit, or back to the property management community a little bit more. So I volunteer a lot of my time with that and educating property managers. And one of the things that's nice about NARPM is it's all open and honest and very easy communication. A lot of us are not competitors because we're all in different markets. And so there's this open line of communication and willingness to share. And I've always been a big fan of continual learning and making sure that you're just making yourself better.
Nice. Well, AJ, it's been a pleasure to get to know you and just really hear some real examples and things that we need to know about to take that bad property and make it into a good community. And even how vacancy is a silent killer in ways that you have built a team, even that you call off-site professionals. I love that term, by the way. You've built this team of off-site professionals who are helping you, ensure vacancy is at its lowest at all times. Right. And so grateful for you just sharing those details with us. Tell the listeners how they can get in touch with you and learn more about you.
Sure. My brother and I have started a podcast with West Side Investors Network. So we're on that weekly. Feel free to listen to that. If you have any questions about property management, you can email me at aj@uptownpm.com. And our website's uptownpm.com and uptownsyndication.com.
Thank you for listening to the Real Estate Syndication Show, brought to you by LifeBridge Capital. LifeBridge Capital works with investors nationwide to invest in real estate, while also donating 50% of its profits to assist parents who are committing to adoption. LifeBridge Capital, making a difference, one investor and one child at a time. Connect online at www.lifebridgecapital.com for free material and videos to further your success.